We are live.
Hello everyone, good morning. On behalf of Read Munch Exhibitions and India Warehousing Show, I would like to welcome you to the fifth edition of India Warehousing Live. Thank you for taking out your time. This is a special edition in partnership with Craftsman Automation, and we would be sharing a small AV with you for the same. Can we please have the video? I would like to introduce the topic of the webinar now, how to engage customers to prevent future waves of pandemic then and now. I feel honored to introduce the moderator of our session today, Mr. Neeraj Bansal, who's the partner and COO, India Global National Leader Supply Chain Realignment, KPMG in India. Mr. Bansal is a senior partner with over 23 years of professional experience and drives global growth agenda through cross-corridor strategies, initiatives, and has significant experience in supply chain function. Over to you, Neeraj.
Thank you, Akshita. Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to today's panel discussion on how to keep up with your customers to prevent future waves of pandemic, where among other things, we'll be talking also about how COVID-19 has disrupted the supply chains and the consumer behavior, and what are the trends we expect going forward. We have a big panel today. So let me start with the introduction of the panelists for today. Uh, Ravi Shankar leads the supply chain vertical for foods. Our beloved Maggie, if I may say that, business unit for Nestle in the South Asia region. He comes with 11 years of multi-business experience in supply chain planning and operations. Mr. Vishwanath Tiwari, he comes with over 10 years of experience in supply and demand planning and supply chain management transformation projects. He is presently associated with PepsiCo in a capacity of an associate director, integrated supply chain for the EMENA sector. We also have with us Mr. Ramkesh Jhangra. He is the head of supply chain management at Ericsson with 19 years of rich experience in the area of planning and networking skills. Welcome, Ramkesh. We have Dr. Ravi Prakash Mathur. He is the vice president and head of global logistics and supply chain excellence. Dr. Reddy Laboratories holds 25 years of expertise in handling global logistics, digital supply chain planning systems, procurement, and end-to-end supply chains. Mr. Sumit Sharma, our last panel for the day, he's the co-founder of GoBolt. With over 4 years of work experience with finance industry giants, he came up with his own venture, GoBolt, in September 2015. Uh, Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion. Uh, with this, I'll just start the discussion with some initial remarks, and then we will move to the panel discussion with our panelists. Uh, I know this phrase has been overused in past 6 to 7 months, but these are indeed unprecedented times, and the COVID-19 pandemic has fundamentally changed the world, as we know it. The disease is continuing to spread rapidly across the globe. It has collapsed economic activity and is collapsing economic activity in a big way, and also has disrupted the supply chains. While the production reduced and consumer spending has taken a hit there, things are also now started to move back to normal as well in many areas and sectors around it. Owing to the efforts of the governments across the world and in India as well, we have started to see green shoots of recovery and economic activity returning to pre-COVID levels for some sectors around that. While the normalcy is being restored, the pandemic also has had a domino effect on the different facets of how businesses are operating. So when we look at companies, they are taking measures to realign their supply chains. They're also trying to manage the erratic consumption patterns as well. And above all, companies are also trying to see that how they can abide by the social distancing norms also on the shop floors, in the warehouses, and the different places with our workplaces around it. And these are also critical to maintain the supply chain functioning as well there. And if you look at it, we KPMG had done a survey recently of the CEOs around it. According to our survey on the CEO Outlook part of it, we saw that 67% of the CEOs globally and 64% of the CEOs in India have cited their need for reinventing their supply chains as a result of the pandemic. Let me also look at the perspective to say that while the COVID-19 has induced disruption, it has also led to certain positives for certain sectors. And if I quickly talk about three of these sectors, in terms of domestic manufacturing is getting a push currently, and we will talk about that in our panel discussion also more today. Secondly, in terms of social distancing norms, as e-commerce is now helping us to reach the masses, by another estimate, Indian online grocery market is expected to register a year-on-year growth of 76% in 2020. Lastly, the pandemic has also made companies aware of vulnerabilities in their existing supply chains, and now companies are also looking to see how they can infuse technology in a big way to future-proof their supply chains. From our survey, which KPMG had done, we also noted that 80% of the CEOs have mentioned that they have fast-tracked the progress for creating next-generation digitized operating models and infusing supply chain technologies into their whole supply chain area aspect of it. And when we look at the COVID-induced supply chain disruptions, I would say that it's been a mixed bag. Believe that COVID-19 pandemic is a catalyst for companies and the entire industries to rethink and transform their global supply chain model. These are some of the areas that we will discuss during our panel discussion today. And three areas, if I may highlight more. So we have divided the panel in terms of three themes here today. So the first theme will focus on the challenges faced by the supply chains in the several sectors due to the pandemic, where we'll look at some of the mitigation measures, some of the trends which are being seen, and also what are the learnings which have come out of this situation right now. And we have a wide range of views coming in, given that we will be covering the F&B sector, we'll be covering the industrial sector as well there. So look forward to that aspect of it. And while we will discuss the challenges, we will also move to the second theme in terms of how India has this opportunity to take this forward and see that how it can emerge as a global hub for manufacturing there. And lastly, we will look at some of the next steps for the India and the Indian industry in terms of how, from a supply chain point of view, we can really push it up. By use of technology. Does that require changes in the manpower planning as well? So that is what we'll cover in the third theme there. Towards the end of the session, we'll also open the floor for Q&A. I would urge everyone, like I posted in the chat box, also to post their questions in the Q&A functionality, which is given as part of the Zoom function here. We also want to hear from you as we kind of do in the session. So we'll have three polling questions. And why not, let's start with the first one, Akshita, right now. Akshita, can we have the polling question? Yeah, thank you. So with the first question done, let me now kickstart today's discussion. Let me bring in Ravi Shankar and Vishwanath for this. Ravi, Ravi Shankar, if I come to you first, there we have two Ravis, so I'll be using Ravi Shankar and Pathur, as a way to address you there. Yeah. So if I look at it, I think the global crisis, like you were discussing, has also pushed the F&B sector to explore health, wellness, and nutrition in terms of consumer goods part of it. And this transformation would have also required like dealing with demand supply chain disruptions and also managing the product and labor aspects of it. So if you were to look at the last 7 months, 8 months around it and see that what is the single most important issue that you would have faced and how would have managed it there? If you can share some insights from that.
Sure, Neeraj. Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you for the opportunity. Just a small disclaimer before I start. The views and opinions are my personal as an industry professional and not necessarily validated by my current organization's viewpoint. So yes, Neeraj, you are right. The pandemic did lead to a shift and increase in in-house consumption, which is providing a strong tailwind for the F&B sector. It has also revitalized the need for comfort food, which was once feared to have fallen out of fashion. Yes, the last 7 months have indeed been very difficult for us as an industry. But if I was to pick, say, one challenge which we really had to manage in the last 7 months, especially in the first 3 months, it was managing our upstream business partners. You see, we take a lot of perishable commodities as raw material, for example, milk, which come from the rural farmers. So we ensured right from the 22nd of March, when the lockdown started, not a single drop of milk which were coming to our collection centers were turned back. We had to manage our manufacturing setups to ensure that every drop of milk coming is processed, nothing is going wasted. Secondly, we also had to, revise our service level agreements with our MSME suppliers because they were facing credit crunch, they were facing labor shortage. So to ensure they don't unnecessarily get penalized because of their service deterioration, we had to change our SLAs. We also changed the credit term for these suppliers to ensure they're able to tackle through the credit crunch that they are facing. We increased our level of engagement with the suppliers from probably fortnightly to daily for the first 3 months of the pandemic, wherein a lot of information exchange was happening. Nestle as a company and we as people, we are trying to train them on how to manage the pandemic, how to take care of labor, how to maximize output with limited footfalls. So yes, managing upstream business partners was one big challenge. The second that we faced, as you rightly mentioned, was on a production front and making product available. So footfalls were limited in all our manufacturing sites for the first 3 to 4 months. So we had to really, change the way we crew our lines. We had to change the entire crewing pattern to maximize the output tonnage per man hour so that we are able to provide more food to the market, because that was the need of the hour, to provide more food to the market. We also did a lot of short-term automation, quick automation tricks to reduce the manpower required. Then we tried something which was called direct delivery to our customers from our factory. So we tried to let go of the distribution centers that we have. So in the quarter 2 of the April to June, we did almost 25-30% of deliveries direct to the customer, which reduced the lead time to connect to them. Then we also used the Indian Railways for transportation. From April to June, the railway network was completely vacant. And for example, trains from Ludhiana to Guwahati were reaching in 3 days flat. So we collaborated with Indian Railways to really crash down the lead times to connect to our customers. And then yes, indeed, training our people, coaching our people on how to handle the pandemic, what are the safety measures. So that was a brief of what we did and the big challenges that we had, Neeraj, in the first couple of months of the pandemic.
Thank you, Ravi, for that. So you kind of spoke about, the issues with respect to your suppliers, issues in terms of production side of it, and also on the distribution side of it. Vishwanath, if I can get you here, you represent PepsiCo, and PepsiCo is also in the food business as well, and so if you can also highlight in terms of and take it forward in terms of some of the issues that you faced from an India region point of view, and also as you represent the MENA region as well. So if you can also relate in terms of some of the, from an overseas perspective also, were the challenges seen as similar, were there practices which are similar, or there are one or two differences which we could learn from as well? Vishwanath, you are on mute, sorry. Sorry, Vishwanath, we're not able to hear you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible now, please.
Okay. Yep. So just adding to Ravi Shankar's point, I think he mentioned all the operational issues which any F&B businesses has mentioned. But what I would say that the first shock is basically to change your mindset and to adopt to the new normals, right? So whenever you come to know that your plants are going to be closed, right, there are so much stringent government norms. Your distributors facilities are closed certain times, and the question is that the processes which you are mentioning, how quickly you want to flex them and put a new way of working into that, right? So actually we prepared the complete pandemic in 3 stages. So the preparation, the execution, and the fast response, right, post the lockdown got removed. The biggest challenge we faced on the production side, demand as far as the food and beverage industry is concerned, the end consumer demand, there is no issue, right? Even if I say that in certain markets we have seen the demand of snacks has increased because people are at home, kids are at home, right? So demand side there is no issue, but when it comes to the production facilities are empty, right? And there are like so stringent government measures that is very difficult to go and start with. So like Ravi mentioned, the training, putting the safety measures, the sanitation, and even in certain plants, we have to create a working hostel for our workers, right? Because there is a government given the approval that until you keep these workers in your factory, we won't allow the facility to open. So that's something in India, especially, which we have done. If I talk about the broader MENA market, Asia, Middle East, and even the North Africa market, the supply disruptions were not that much because essentially these markets had not put production facilities on close, right? Like India did. India lockdown was a severe lockdown. So from production side, we have not faced much issue in these facilities. But yes, yeah, the hygiene thing, the taking all the safety measures, the hygiene measures, all those things have to be incorporated in there. Essentially, what we face issue in other markets is the change in the mix, right? So the consumption pattern from got changed completely, right? The way, so what happens? It's a long-term implication because if you start with your demand pattern that define your complete supply chain strategy. If your consumption pattern change, you don't know which product to produce, which product not to produce, right? And even in the food industry, the high number of obsolescence and all, right? So what we did, we implemented a very collaborated approach where a small task force between sales, supply chain, production is being set up, and that task force is meeting 2 times in a week, right? So it is capturing demand as early as possible. And since the production guys are also here, so there is no lag of information transmission to the upper level, right? So that's something which we done. Then we devise a strategy of observing, validating, executing, and monitoring, right? So basically, observe as a supply chain guys what's happening in the market, then validate it with your secondary data, execute with your systems flexibility, and keep monitoring that how the situation goes past, right? So last 6 months, probably that's the model which we have faced to manage our supply chain.
Thanks, Vishwanath, for this. Ravi, if I can get you here again, we just did a poll, as you saw, and we've got a 55% plus, of our audience believes that there is a permanent shift that they've had in terms of their habits, from an online shopping perspective. Uh, and you would have seen some similarity in terms of the way you were approaching things as well. So from your perspective, is that inducing a particular focus and shift from your supply chain strategy in terms of distribution part of it?
Yes, Neeraj. E-commerce is for sure seeing a lot of traction. Health and wellness vertical is seeing a lot of traction on online platforms. So as F&B sectors, we have to fine tune our strategy in line with the need of the consumer. So we did a lot of things. For example, we did tweak our route to market strategy. We've started producing specialized packs for the e-commerce channel because they have certain requirement of price point, they have certain requirement of grammage, the dimension of the shipper. So we did that. We also increased our collaboration with the e-commerce channel partners over the last 3 to 4 months on trying to identify demand patterns, trying to identify the consumer shift pattern, and then trying to collaborate with them during the festive discount season as well. Number three, we did work with them on their logistics infrastructure piece as well, because it was a big task for them as well to handle the sudden increase in orders. Plus, it was a big task for them to distribute during the initial couple of months of lockdown. We did enable them wherever we could to let them use our facilities, to work with them on the best distribution model. And yes, we keep working with them because this is one channel we see immense opportunity to grow. The contribution of e-commerce has grown at least double in the last 6 months, and we keep seeing this going up. So yeah.
Okay, great. And there's I was reading a while back that like Nielsen reported that like FMCG sector industry players have been like also new launches as well. So almost like close to 2,000 new launches have happened during this 4-5 month period around it there, from March onwards there. And at the same time, there's also a perspective that industry majors were wanting to have more supply chain efficiencies by reducing some of the SKUs as well. So from a your company perspective, how do you see this, and what is the agility that you are trying to imbibe in supply chain?
Yeah. So what we did, Neeraj, very rightly said, there were two-pronged approach. One was on product portfolio optimization, standard supply chain terminology, wherein you try and manage your products and what you're making available in the market. We did 2 rounds of it, one at the beginning of the pandemic, from 2 perspectives. One obviously was the upstream operational complexities to maximize tonnage per man hour, simple calculation. The second one on how do we really manage our downstream distribution, because when you have less sales people, when you have less people in the distribution centers, you want to really limit and sell what will give you the maximum traction and make maximum thing available. So we did run a couple of rounds of product portfolio optimization. On the NPD, we had a cautious approach for the first 3 months, to be honest, Neeraj. We actually let go of certain of our launches for the first 3 months to reduce the complexity in the upstream and downstream supply chain, to let our factory people focus on managing the core. Once we were over from the initial setback of the pandemic, say around May end, June beginning, then we started revitalizing our NPD launch plans. And yes, in the last 3 months, as a company, we have done good 10 to 12 strong launches, which are again focused on harnessing the new consumer needs that is there and harnessing the new consumer reality. Even PPP opportunity for that matter is coming up big. The importance of price point products have regained a lot of importance during this pandemic because pockets are tight, rural economy is growing. So we're trying to do a lot of NPDs on that end as well to maintain price point and to give healthy options to the people in rural India as well.
Sure. Thanks, Ravi Shankar, for your inputs on that. Let me get Ravi Mathur now, because he presents Dr. Reddy Laboratories, there, and that's again a sector which has been like big in focus, all across, and continues to be in focus as well. So Ravi Mathur, if I can get you here, from a pharma industry perspective, there have been like major talks which have been happening in terms of reevaluating the sourcing strategy, redesigning the supply network as well, and also building more resilient warehousing capabilities. What according to you are, like, say, 3-4 strategic changes organizations are planning or doing right now on supply chain management? And if you want to just give it a color in terms of what are they doing internally and externally?
Yeah, thanks, Neeraj, for that question. So I'll answer that question from a perspective of supply chain planning itself. Normally the normal supply chain planning process starts with estimating the demand, and that converting that demand estimate into some sort of a plan that gets created into a production plan, and subsequently from the production plan, that is where the sourcing team takes over. After that gets converted into a requirement for the raw materials to the bill of material, right? Normally, the you know in the conventional thought process, we all only think that it is only the demand that is varying, right? And there's an increasing demand, or like we discussed, is that there's a change in consumption between your own SKUs, and all variabilities that you plan for in your production system are around those variabilities which are coming from the demand side, right? And in response to the demand that you're experiencing, the planning process normally just creates a response, assuming that your capacity is there, assuming that your material is there, and your design capacity is like sufficient to kind of absorb all the changes that are happening from the demand side. Now, unfortunately, what this pandemic has also exposed to us is that there are changes coming not only from the demand side, there are changes coming also from the supply side, right? Because of the disruption, your supplies are also not so certain. Either from because of the geography where it is coming from, or because of the logistic reason. So somehow the organizations now need to have developed this capability, both in terms of processes and in terms of digital kind of capabilities, where you are able to look at both the variations simultaneously, right? And come up with a plan that is kind of a sweet spot between what your materials are, what you're able to support in terms of your procurement, and what you're able to support in terms of your production, and how can you meet the demand. Okay, so the problem actually becomes far more complex, right? So internally, what people do is they provide for alternate resources in case a demand spike is there. A similar, much more robust process needs to come in for planning for your alternate vendors, right? Now, developing alternate vendors is a long lead time process. So the challenge now is, how do you shorten that process? How do you have more plan Bs, more plan Cs, and then also the entire planning process itself, which is like very tactical in nature. How do you readjust it quickly to come to a plan that is meets both your market and your supply requirements? So that's my opening remark to that, to that discussion. Thanks for that question, Neeraj.
No, no, sure, Ravi, for that. I think I was just reminding that, when you said plan A, B, C, perhaps, when you were doing a budgeting exercise, we went to, perhaps plan Z as well, in terms of, how many plans were drawn up in March, both in terms of demand and supply aspect of it. So clearly, I mean, there has been a very, very high stress which has come in there.
Yeah, so we're clearly living in a world of scenario modeling. The era of very stable planning processes is, I think, over. The capability that has to evolve now is modeling scenarios and planning your execution for various scenarios. That is going to be the way forward.
Sure. Thanks for that. And then, since you represent, and like I said, I mean, a sector which is really much being talked about currently also, and COVID-19 has, so let me just ask you another question, right now only, in terms of, that way the COVID-19 has kind of been extensively influenced, both in terms of clinical trials, drug development globally, and also as we are all waiting for that vaccine to come up, and then get distributed appropriately and also on a timely basis around it. So if you could share your perspective in terms of what do you see as some of the challenges and resolutions, with the supply and distribution of a potential COVID-19 vaccine?
Sure. So Neeraj, I mean, these are very early days, and I like to just put the disclaimer again, like what Ravi Shankar had said earlier. I'm just sharing my personal views on this. These are still very early days for vaccine, distribution to be talked about. But some very obvious things that are there that we need to take care of is that we're talking about a very big scale over here. If you're talking about 70, 80 crore people to be vaccinated, in the first wave itself, that puts an immense challenge on the infrastructure or on the infrastructure itself, right? And specifically, here we are talking about cold chain infrastructure, correct? I don't think the current infrastructure setup is geared up to handle that kind of a scale in terms of active solutions for transportation or passive solutions for transportation. If you drill it down to some basic requirements, how much for transportation, how much face change material is required, how much dry ice is required, especially and again on the warehousing space, do you have the processes uh, to handle those kind of volume on a daily basis? So, and I'm sure the sector is working on creating those processes and the infrastructure. But this is something where you'll see a lot of activity in the coming months. Cold chain management at a very large, unprecedented scale that we have seen so far, not only in India but also globally. So those are going to be some exciting, discussions that will be happening. That are going to be happening very soon.
Thanks, Ravi, for it. And I'll just remind our audience again to keep posting their questions in the Q&A functionality. We've started to receive some of them, and then we will be taking them up as part of the final Q&A round towards the end of the session. Ramkesh, if I may get you here now, let's move to from a telecommunication perspective there. So, Ramkesh, in terms of Indian equipment suppliers, from a telecommunication point of view, they are dependent a lot on the import of components there, raw materials, semi-finished goods, and also in terms of the finished goods as well from overseas aspect of it. So during the pandemic, what is the kind of changes that the industry has had to make, in terms of the supply chain to keep the the factories working, keep the distribution working as well?
Thank you, Neeraj. I hope I am audible to all of you.
Yes, you are. Please, thank you.
Yeah, thanks again. The pandemic has changed the life of masses across the globe, across geography, and irrespective of any industry. And this is a very unique and new kind of pandemic, which is being debated as a man-made kind of pandemic, which has led to geopolitical situation as well. Now, two big factor. One is pandemic, COVID pandemic. Another is geopolitical issue by which government of many countries has issues new guidelines from which country you can import and from which country you cannot import. To be very frank, China is and was the biggest manufacturer hub of the world, and now many countries are looking of options other than China as well. Same is the condition for telecom industry in India as well. If I describe telecom industry, I'm sure many people will not would be aware about this. The major factor or division of this industry is one is tower infrastructure company, the company who are making towers which we are looking around our residence or offices, which include steel towers, electrical equipment, civil electrical works kind of their consumption. This part of telecom industry is more domestic controlled, and maximum of the equipments are locally manufactured or supplied. Second type of products are used in telecom industry are radio and switches equipments, which is more known as radio transceiver antenna extra, which provide you network of mobile telecommunications. These industry are maximum import, but since last few years as government was very strict to focus on domestic manufacturing, then a major company has put their plants in India as well. So Ericsson has also was having one big plant in Jaipur and another plant started in Pune through our partner. And in that, components are also being manufactured locally. Still, there are many equipments which were imported from abroad. Slowly, either company is going for localization of all components or importing from friendly commercial lineup countries. A third kind of division in industry is mobile handset, which is smart handset are more into a electronic products, and this industry is more into hand of our Korean friends and US. Though few of them are having their manufacturing plant in China, India is also having manufacturing plant, and gradually these are coming up. Many players have started their production in India as well. So likely we are seeing major export of mobile handsets, smart handset will be happen very soon from India as well. And last portion of this industry is mobile handset accessories, mobile covers, chargers, earphones, and other cosmetic items which are being used to decorate your mobile handset. I think these kind of products are used massively and in a huge quantum. Also, this was purely import from abroad before pandemic, and now slowly I'm happy to share many new entrepreneur or small scale industries are coming up in India to start into making mobile covers, chargers, and earphones, headphones, these kind of equipments, and they are coming up very fastly. This give opportunity for them to enlarge the business skills and to start export as well. So this is all about telecom industry, Neeraj, I think.
Sure. Thanks, Ramkesh. For giving us a lowdown in terms of the different industry components and also some of the challenges associated with that. Sumit, if
Yes.
I get you here, I think all our panelists spoke about the fact that there are and representing their industries, that the challenges that they faced and some of the ways they are rethinking on the supply chain changes that they're bringing along. And Sumit, you are providing supply chain solutions across industries. So if you could, I think for you this has been a advantageous situation to be in terms of supporting several players with their changes that they have to do. So if you can give us a perspective in terms of what is the kind of solutions that you are providing for these challenges that companies are looking at.
Sure. Thank you, Neeraj, for the opportunity. It's great to hear from all the esteemed panelists on how different and demand manufacturing, etc., has changed because of COVID pandemic. I can shed some lines on the execution part of the supply chain. Uh, we are a company which provides end-to-end logistics for express industries, primarily e-commerce. We are one of the biggest vendors for the likes of Amazon, Flipkart, etc. And as we all understand, because of the pandemic, the and consumption patterns have changed a lot. Okay, and in fact, not just e-commerce, but many of the other traditional industries, we have started seeing that they are looking at e-commerce as a distribution channel. Okay, for their products. So, as a supplier of or as a vendor to these industries, we have also had to go undergo many changes. As an end-to-end logistics services, we provide primary, secondary distribution, warehousing, which sometimes for e-commerce we call as fulfillment centers. We get into planning, and we also get into technology services for them. So e-commerce, we all know, has always been one of the sectors which was very agile in terms of the supply chain. It's a very inventory-less model, so a lot of focus was done on execution part of it, the express execution part of it, technology enabled, and having a very less slack in terms of any kind of delays that was acceptable in the entire distribution model. Now, when we see more and more demand coming through these channels, either through these two big tools of the e-commerce or independent e-commerce channels for customers, okay, we also have to look beyond the traditional ways of doing e-commerce distribution. So earlier, what it was more of a hub and spoke model, where we used to do movements from their mother hubs or the mother warehouses to another mother warehouses, and then regional distribution was done. Where we've seen changes is that people have started reinventing their plans for keeping inventories at different nodes. The demand centers have changed. Okay, more tier two, tier three cities have come up in terms of consuming e-commerce led demand. So a lot of changes have been done in terms of secondary distribution. We have to have covered more areas in terms of the the size of the cargoes have reduced in terms of secondary distribution, but there has been an upsizing in terms of line haul because people have gone for consolidation at their major warehouses. Okay. Also, if we see about secondary distribution, we are see a lot of demand for now capacity remodeling, where we are looking at variable capacity models for our customers. So it is not necessarily that people are looking at getting spaces which are fixed, okay, for different regions. They have to have nimbleness around how they move around their goods, how they move closer to their consumer demand centers, how they fulfill the demands. Okay, demand fulfillment has become a lot of buzzword after this COVID pandemic. Okay, so one of the upcoming models that we are seeing, especially in terms of secondary distribution, is where people are looking into how they can provide a variable capacity model to their customers. We are looking into that, where a customer need not have a fixed space booked at one particular space area, and they can move around with their inventory levels as per the demands as moves. Planning becomes much better, execution becomes much better. There's a definite cost saving for the customers in terms of their holding costs. So a lot of things for good have changed because of this pandemic. There's a silver lining in this, where now we see the need of having a more nimble supply chain models. And technology, last but not the least, technology has started coming up. We also work in the FMCG sector. We have been working with Unilever and P&G for long, and other FMCG companies as well. And now we see more and more inquiries coming up into not just a traditional form of technology, where there was solutions of tracking that people were looking into, or simple WMS systems or vendor management systems. But now companies are more inquiring more about data analytics systems as well, where they can understand the supply chain much better. They can see where those low-hanging fruits are there to reduce any kind of slack, to improve efficiencies. And now even I would say the bigger traditional sectors are looking into consumer satisfaction models as well, where they can enhance consumer experiences. So a lot of focus has now come from the demand side as well, to provide technology solutions, to innovate around technology. And so this is a very, very definite positive we all can look from this pandemic. So these are my thoughts from the execution part of the supply chain.
Sure. Akshita, can we have the second poll now? So Ravi Shankar, may I get you here? While our audience is answering the question, and we'll get the poll results as well. From a perspective that the Indian government has launched, several schemes right now to see that we are able to project India as a very strong manufacturing hub, capabilities to take on the role of integrating itself into the global value chain or global supply chain around it. What are the few things that you think would help us get there, and what is the likelihood that you see that from an India perspective that we would be part of this entire chain in a more effective manner?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. So, Neil, yes, as a country across industries, we have shown a lot of resilience and very high adaptability in the early stages of pandemic. No doubt, the government is supporting us a lot by rolling out good policies in that direction. But if India was to become a truly global hub of supply chain, I think there are 3-4 things that we should do. And I'm probably quoting some bit of my speech from article from a professor from IIM Udaipur. So the first that we have to do is build an infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, it not only means transportation and logistics, it means telecom infrastructure, it means digital infrastructure to bring in transparency in supply chain. So we need to develop infrastructure. We need to develop digital telecom infrastructure to bring in transparency and connect the local and national supply chain. For example, all the big companies have a very stable digitized supply chain, but when it comes to our suppliers, the MSME business partners, their traceability, and we have a question in the Q&A section on traceability. The traceability for our small suppliers is limited. So like example, Sumit was mentioning on data analytics. Most of the established companies use it, but do our small business partners use it? Answer is no. So probably there is a need to digitize and get them connected so that we have a one single hub of supply chain running across the country. Third, obviously, is government policies on trade negotiation. As Mr. Ramkesh was saying, because of the pandemic, a lot of protectionist policies is going around the world. Countries are trying to protect their own trade. So the government will have to here negotiate favorable trade policies for us to encourage India as a manufacturing hub for global operations, because we have the talent and we have the willpower, but till the time we get global companies to come here, set up operations, we'll not be really able to harness it to all extent. And lastly, yes, environmental sustainability. This pandemic has brought this buzzword again to the fore. They will, apart from all the pains that was there about the pandemic, one thing was very clear, loud and clear, was nature reclaiming its own right, nature coming back to the bloom, nature being the best. People have realized the importance of environmental sustainability, and here, as supply chain professionals, as supply chain organizations, we have a big role to play in terms of responsibility of sourcing, responsibility of waste management, responsibility of disposal, carbon footprints, and then eventually sustainability. Most of the industries that we know are going towards plastic sustainability, becoming plastic neutral, waste disposal neutral. So these are 3-4 key things that as a country and as supply chain organizations will have to really take care to become the global hub. That is a vision for us.
Vishwanath, this is a question which we had, and also, I could see that, there are a couple of questions which have come from the audience also. If I just try and combine it, the question is in terms of fluctuations in the consumer demand and also the presence of omni-channel, there. So how do you, as a company, try and balance out, the omni-channel strategy to meet the demand, and also at the local level, the demands are varying. So how does the omni-channel strategy, let's say, fit in to meet that fluctuating demands and consumer pattern in terms of the requirements part of it? You're on mute, Vishwanath.
Oh, sorry, guys. Yeah. So actually, there is a natural change in the customer demand pattern, right? So if we have seen the developing, more the developed world, if you will see, there is organized trade, which is the prominent channel, right? The big supermarkets, the Walmart kind of structure. But if you go to the developing countries, still the traditional trade, which is the 80 to 90% demand is being satisfied. So now there is a natural tendency of moving from traditional trade to the organized trade, right? And the COVID pandemic, if we see, right, so this is also adding the e-commerce as a third option, although it's also growing in with a stable pace, but with pandemic, right, the pace has improved. So if I'll say there are 3 types of model, if I compare, right? So one is the India model. If you can see India, you can see Egypt, and we can find the Middle East, right? Most of these the traditional trade kind of markets. On the other side, you see the developed world, right? Where still the e-commerce is not that high, but the organized trade is very high. If you see the Australia, New Zealand, even the US, and few of these markets. Third is the important one, which is the China model, right? So if you see the China, the e-com is 30% of their business, modern trade, organized trade, the 35 kind of thing, right? So as a India, what we have to see here in India, we have to see the future as on the same line of the China. It means that in next 5 to 10 years, my e-com somewhere going to be between 20 to 30%. My organized trade or modern trade going to be somewhere around 30 to 40%. It means the way we are serving our customer, the way we are capturing our demand is drastically going to change. So capturing demand in e-com, if you see, the forecast accuracy goes less than 30 or 20%, right? It's very difficult. You can't figure out what is the demand. It completely depends on the footfall. Similarly, with the organized trade also, it's very promotion driven market, and not only promotion at your side, but promotion at your customer side as well, right? So it's very difficult to work in sync with your offtake in that, right? So definitely what we need to do is to build up our digitization strategy. And irony is that I hear that KPMG survey which you mentioned, right? So I was going through a report 2 years back, the Gartner research, which says that 70% of our supply chain heads don't have the digitization roadmap at all, right? So, and now you are saying that 70% do have, the CEOs do have the roadmap. So that's the kind of positive push to the supply chain industry as a whole, that now we started realizing the importance of digitization in capturing the demand, in tracing the demand and all, right? And it's going to be there because it's very difficult to forecast the organized trade, the e-commerce by traditional means. Now, apart from the regular, the statistical models, now there is a buzzword of the machine learning, and believe me, it's going to be very beneficial if you have 10 factors, because you don't know, as a human mind you can't figure out, right, which model is shaping your demand. So with the advent of these technologies and digitization tools which are going to come, next 5 to 10 years, you will see a completely different supply chain structure working in many of the organizations.
Ravi, Mathur, if I can get you, on this and just taking this conversation forward, Vishwanath stressed on the technology aspect of it, and we and Sumit also alluded to that. So from a demand responsive supply chains of future, there is an aspect on technology. If you can talk a bit on that, and then also people continue to remain a very important part of it there. And in our audience questions also, we are seeing that there are question around in terms of current situation on manpower, how it's kind of getting managed with the there are different norms which have to be followed as well, and B, in terms of manpower strategy going forward. If you're looking at a very high technology intensive supply chains, so what is the manpower strategy for the industry on a go forward basis? So if you could answer in two parts, one in terms of the current part of it, and also in terms of from a manpower strategy of future, that will help our audience perhaps there. Ravi, Mathur?
Neeraj, sorry, I had a connection issue. Can you just can you just?
Oh, no problem. I was saying that Vishwanath spoke about the fact that there is to have a strong, robust omni-channel, you need to have investments into technology coming in there, and with the variability in demand also, that is a requirement over there. So my question to you was that with this variability in demand and the requirement of technology, there is also a shift in the manpower strategy, perhaps, which is required. So in terms of meeting that short-term requirement at the current time, given that there are social distancing and other norms to be followed. So that's a question an audience has asked as well there. And second, in terms of manpower strategy going forward, how does this influence, your decisions from a organization point of view?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in the context of the omni-channel that Vishwanath spoke about, and of course, one of the components, as he mentioned, was your e-commerce, a part of the channel where you're actually delivering your product to the customer at the point of his need. Yeah, and obviously there is a manpower component over there also, because you have a system of making deliveries where you need manpower to go and make the delivery at the last mile. Okay, so I'll just like to kind of connect it with some basic supply chain principles when we come to supply chain design. So if we just ask you to step back a little bit and go back to the classical supply chain model that we all hear about, which was the Ford manufacturing process, right? Before that, we had, before the assembly line concept came into manufacturing, it was actually the material that used to go to a point of assembly in a car manufacturing place, where the material was actually moving to the man. Okay, the various parts of a car, they used to come to a central assembly point. So that was the design, and there was a job role which was about somebody who would put the parts together and create a car. When the assembly line or the single piece flow came, it is actually the parts that started moving, right? And the man was stationary. Okay. So, the entire supply chain design concept is about whether the man is moving or the material is moving, right? Any supply chain concept you see, even if you go to a fast food joint or a restaurant, the entire things that actually design it is about your flow of material. Now, in the omni channel or the e-commerce space, while you might just think of your delivery boys as somebody who's just picking a delivery, but looking at it as a supply chain design perspective, that is movement of material. Okay, right? Now your demand goes up, or your demand goes down, or your demand shifts. This particular resource, which is moving that material from the point of production to the point of consumption, also is having various, the demand for that is also going up and down. Okay, so the point that I'm making is, now if you look at manpower as a capacity, okay, now like any other capacity in a supply chain, it is having variable demand. It could go up, it could go down, right? So how do you solve for it? You don't want people sitting on the bench, right, waiting for orders to be delivered or waiting for orders to be picked up. So the way people can assume, approach this is to create fungible capacity, which can be common across various users in the supply chain. Okay, and maybe that is a good, that's a business space that is maybe somebody people are already there, or it can come up in the future, where a service, a capacity provider in terms of human resources of that person moving the material from point A to point B is shared across various players, right? It brings your cost down. It ensures that capacity utilization is more. And to your point of technology, just as you reserve production capacity, or you reserve your production machines in a production, in a manufacturing environment, similar planning processes and technology need to be there to be, that you book that resource, like as you book a cab on Uber, you book that person on Uber. So this is something that the e-commerce industry needs to come together and create that model, using technology and using this design principle supply chain, that can give you more, more bang for your money. So that was just some thought I had on that question. Maybe not completely answering your question on manpower, but on the omni-channel piece, possibly, this is some model. This is one model that people can look at.
Sure, sure. Sumit, if I get you here in terms of your views on the intensive use of technology, as well as in terms of the manpower part of it, how are you seeing this trend and how you are helping in resolution of this?
First on the technology part, I'll cover on the technology part. So technology have changed shape from, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, from just being a one-way technology in terms of a track and trace technology, to a technology which facilitates business decisions, which facilitates supply chain efficiencies, etc. Okay. So now, as we speak about supply chain technology, most of the movements that we do, okay, as an industry, I'm talking about, is some or the other way can be tracked. Okay, either those are GPS technologies, where in the remote location GPS are not available or not accessible. We have SIM card based tracking technologies as well, where we talk about efficiency dashboards. So most of the customers or the users in the system, it can be from the demand side or it can be on the downstream on the supply side. People are using efficiency reports to understand where things can be further improved, where is the scope of putting more focus around. Okay. And where there's a scope of further improving the experience around deliveries. So we have those kind of efficiency dashboards that work around. Then we have automation, essentially in everything. If I talk about supply chain, most of the documents are automated in terms of, we have EPOD solutions. Okay, we have digitizations or automations in terms of bill submissions, payment reconciliations, etc. So which really facilitates or moves the supply chain in a much faster manner. Then we have, in terms of optimizations, we have route optimizers, okay, which have moved beyond just a normal Google map technology, where for line haul distribution, where a transporter is figuring out that what is the best way to make these deliveries, okay, or even for a intra-city movement. So there are a lot of optimization, AI-enabled optimization tools, which not just looks into the real-time traffic situation, which also maps the historical constraints and develops those kind of routes which brings in the best efficiency for any kind of asset utilization, be it fuel utilization, be it manpower utilization, be it the truck utilization. So on technology, we have advanced a lot. We and companies, new age companies similar to us, have been working on these technologies, providing them to our customers. Uh, from the demand side, it started as a push kind of technology where we started off with our customers and tell them the utilization. Now it has become a pull kind of a requirement where we have engaged with a customer. We sit with them in terms of their planning, and technology forms a very big chunk of the planning part of it. Okay, either they do distribution planning, demand planning, what kind of SKUs being used or being pushed to what kind of locations. If we talk about the FMB sector, so this has been developed. This is going a lot way. It requires, and I'll come to the next part of the manpower requirement. So it also rather along with improving the efficiency of the entire system, it also reduces the productivity losses and enhances the utilization factor, be it manpower utilization or asset utilization for the entire supply chain. Okay. On on manpower, of course, supply chain or the smaller subset of it, logistics. So it's a very manpower dependent division. Okay, we are not very real ready for autonomous vehicles. Okay, certain kind of autonomous projects have been done, but those are more into the multimodal parks for internal consumption than for any kind of a commercial usage. So in transportation, in warehousing, in distribution, manpower requirement is there. Where we are looking is that technology and technology driven planning drives this kind of higher efficiency, where the people, the very same people, are being more productive. They are doing things the better way. Okay, there is a complete transparency in terms of movement of goods from one node to another node. It can start from a plant to different warehouses, to distributors, to retailer, to maybe in terms of modern retail or to the end consumer. Okay, as one of our esteemed panel touch base on traceability. So a lot of traceability can happen around this. Traceability not just gives a satisfaction on the consumer part in terms of origin of the good or maybe the shelf life of the good, but also in terms of a supply chain manager. It helps at what kind of node is not performing vis-a-vis the other node. Maybe I have 10 warehouses across India, okay, and my 9 warehouses are working very well. There are different, I would say, parameters on which those are performing, and one is not performing really well. So it also helps me to understand things at a very micro level without deputing much time into this. So it's really a scalable solution to bring in efficiency in then my entire operations. Okay. So my 2 cents around this is technology definitely is playing a big role. Okay, as our esteemed panels have Ravi Shankar just told about that people are now focusing on most kind of technologies, and it has to be all inclusive. So even for the smaller suppliers that these bigger FMPs have, okay, it's no longer that technology is very expensive. It's just that the utilization has to improve further. People have to understand that technology is not replacing any kind of jobs, etc. It's augmenting the efficiencies of those jobs. It's improving the utilization, and it's a virtuous circle. Okay, the more efficiency it brings in, the more it benefits everybody in the entire supply chain, the customer, the manufacturer, the supply chain, logistics, everybody. So yeah, that's my thoughts around it.
Sure. Vishwanath, we have a question from a panelist, from our audience as well, which basically asking in terms of, that we can highlight any usage of latest technology in terms of AI, blockchain, or machine learning in terms of supply chain part of it. Is there an example or an experience that you would like to share?
So right now, the machine learning is going pretty fast, and people are realizing the usage of machine learning. The demand sensing, if you talked about, so the typical demand planning module, the next level of demand planning module is basically the demand sensing, which is sensing the demand on the shorter horizon to the most realistic level. So basically, the machine learning is the technology behind that to enable this demand sensing functionalities. That's something which is now businesses are looking for, and maybe next 2 to 3 years that's going to be any standard implementation in most of these organizations. Apart from that, the another piece which is now getting traction is the RPA, robotic process automation. So if you talk about, so if you want to focus on the granular piece of the business, then all the mundane activities has to be automated. So robotic process automation is a technology where you can automate all your day-to-day mundane activities, circulating report, running various jobs, and those kind of stuff. So I think I put my bet on RPA and machine learning-based demand sensing in next to 2 to 3 years. The most advantageous technologies the industry is going to.
Thanks. And if I just stick to Ravi Shankar did spoke about traceability, and Sumit also alluded to that. There's a question as well, from the audience in terms of that he would like to know that how important traceability is, to the India trade and also consumers around it, and also do they require more visibility, authentication, for them to give access in terms of provenance and also ingredient shelf life there. So. What are your views on this?
So it depends on businesses to businesses, right? So few of the companies are so that traceability of the normal supply chain with GPS and all, right? That's the in your typical supply chain. But there is a product traceability also, right? So for example, I have heard that few of the companies are thinking to putting sensors right in their products. So for example, the tin of edible oil. Okay, so there is a sensor whenever it's going to the domestic user's home, right? They can sense that these many products are below 10% of level, and hence this kind of demand going to come in future, right? I feel like there is still time to go to that level because the investment and kind of traceability is huge in that space. But definitely in the traditional supply chain, the control towers getting traction, the movement of goods across different routes and those kind of stuff, definitely there is a good need in Indian market.
Thanks, Vishwanath. Ravi Shankar, if I can come to you, there's also a question around primarily the focus is to say that there are a lot of fake goods also circulating around, and let's say some dubious organizations have tried to take the advantage of the pandemic and the disruption in supply chain, to flood the market, with some of these aspects of it. So how do brands tackle some of these problems there, and in terms of the challenges which have come up there?
So yeah, good question, Neeraj, and a very relevant question for us as an organization as well in the current times. I might not be able to share the strategy that we're adopting because that's more internal, but the challenge is real, especially in the food industry where regional level you have fake products going into the market, almost similar packaging. Probably the branding is different. They play safe over there, but then the branding is just minusculely different. So we have strategies. We're working with companies like GoVolt, Sumit, similar type of companies to identify solutions which will enable our sales force people, which will enable government authorities when they go on regular visits in the marketplace to identify a fake versus an original. That is what I can say right now. But yes, I know organizations are working on that end, and very soon, Neeraj will have solutions in the marketplace which will be able to differentiate between a fake and original, especially for the established companies that are there in the country right now.
Sure, Ravi. So with this, Akshita, let's have the third and final poll. We are, folks, we are, I would just like to remind everyone that we are kind of in the last few minutes of the panel. So if there's any other question that our audience has, if you can post that also, so we will take that up, and then we will just quickly move into the final round, where we'll ask some quick questions and get some views from our panelists on that. Akshita, can we have the results as well? So the answer to the Make in India question was that we had 86% of the people in our audience believing that that will give a strong push to the Make in India, the current disruption aspect of it. And the answer in terms of the plan to invest in supply chain technologies, there is a mixed response in terms of immediate part of it. There is in the next 6 months there are people believing that 44% people believe that there would be investment that they will do, and then in 6 months to 1 year there is a 35% there. So overall, about if you look at it in terms of the 18 to 24-month period, we are looking at a good investment going in for supply chain changes to happen from a technology perspective there. So almost 77% people are believing that. All right. So with this, let's just get some quick reactions from our panelists. And this will kind of we'll do a rapid fire. We'll kind of go through everyone. I think just give the first thought which comes to you, in a short manner. That will help there. So Sumit, I'll start with you. What are the 2 learnings that you've had from the crisis?
So 2 learnings is first, that processes goes a long way. Okay, people have to invest into processes, and sometimes it's very easier in the short term to get things done in a way that suits the short term requirement, but it hits in the long term. So in terms of processes, for example,
So processes there in that.
Yeah.
That's the first learning.
Second learning is be very agile about how you allocate your resources, because you need to move around even if you believe you're a stabilized organization, even if you believe you're a very stable organization, but there's some level of agility is required in how you move around your resources so that when the need be, you can optimize them.
Sure. So process and agility. Ramkesh, if I may ask you to share 2 learnings that you've had from this crisis.
Yeah, one is to maintain the fitness, and second is ready for change.
Okay. Ravi Mathur?
I think he had to leave.
Oh, okay. Sure. Vishwanath, if you would like to share your learnings.
Yeah, so collaboration and interdependence, right? So that's something which we have to revive. And second, definitely the use of technology, keeping ready for any mishap.
Fair. Ravi?
The first is that inventory is not a bad cholesterol; it's a good cholesterol to have in the system. And the second is the importance of scenario planning. So a lot of organizations who do BCP, who do scenario planning, are able to bounce back much sooner than the others.
Wonderful. And just the last question in terms of, if you were to, being that all of you are an expert in your fields there, what is the one thing that you have started to do, in terms of the business organization part of view, more religiously than you were doing before? And if I may start with, again, in the same order, Sumit.
We have started focusing more on compliances, okay, because it's process compliances, as I said, more of the processes that needed some kind of update to make them more light, more agile, so that very quickly everybody in the system understands, knows this role, okay, and there is no, if such kind of a pandemic or issues comes up again, okay, there's no kind of a chaos where people are not, they don't understand that how they need to react. So everybody understands. So a lot of SOPs have been developed for us in these pandemic.
Vishwanath?
So making your calendar more structured in advance, right? So right now you have to think 1 month in advance, schedule different connects, plan out your month completely. That's something as an individual I have learned during that.
Okay. Ramkesh?
Sorry, I missed the question.
Ramkesh, if you were to share like an expert in your field, what is it one thing that you've been starting to do religiously now, which you were, let's say, doing less earlier or not doing at all?
I think from company side, we are focusing to improve the logistics performance index, and personal level focus on fitness.
All right, sure, sure. So, Ravi, I'll come to you last. Then, with you, we'll end this panel as well. So, what's your one thing that you are focusing much more professionally, and if you want to share personally as well?
Simplification, Neeraj, both professionally and personally. This pandemic has taught us that to be agile, we have to be simple. We really don't have to have 100 SKUs for a particular product line for the consumers to come and buy. In fact, having 10 probably helps them also to make a choice, helps you plan your inventories and your upstream demand forecasting better, helps you manage your upstream raw material range better. So simplification is what is probably priority number one for us going ahead, and we're really focusing on that.
Wonderful. I think that's an apt way to end the panel as well. Simplification, the theme coming in out of this such a complex, way to kind of deal the kind of situation that we are facing as well there. So with this, I thank all my fellow panelists, and I thank the audience for joining us today. We did discuss various issues that are there in terms of the demand part of it, and how the variability in demand is inducing a lot of pressure on the supply chain aspects of it there, and what are the things that organizations are doing from a technology perspective, from manpower strategy perspective, also in terms of the changes that they've had to do from a short duration point of view, and also some glimpses of what organizations are doing from a overseas perspective as well, in terms of the dependency that they have. So with this, I'll bring this session to a close. Akshita, over to you.
Thank you, Neeraj, and thank you all the panelists. It was a great session, and there are a lot of takeaways that we have today. Before we end the session, I would like to play the video again. It is a video by Craftsman. Could we please have the video? That was the end of the session for today. Thank you everyone again for your time. I especially thank all the panelists for sharing such great insights, and Neeraj for wonderfully steering the session today. Thank you everyone. Have a good day and stay safe. Goodbye.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye
Thanks.
bye.